The emergency alarm cut through the morning silence like a knife. Aria Blake was drinking her third coffee of the day when every screen in the command center flashed red. She set down her cup carefully, watching the data scroll across the displays. 53 ships had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Meridian system. Big ships, warships, and they were not human. "Get me visual," Aria said quietly. Her crew moved fast, fingers dancing over controls. The main screen flickered and showed the fleet hanging in space like dark metal birds. Their hulls were covered in angular armor plating that looked more like weapons than protection. At the center floated a massive flagship, easily 3 times the size of anything humanity had ever built. The communications officer turned in her seat. "Ma'am, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. It's a recorded message looping every 30 seconds. Let's hear it." The voice that filled the command center was deep and resonant, speaking perfect English with an accent that sounded almost amused. "I am General Crane of the Draxian Imperial Armada. Your system now falls under Draxian authority. You have 48 hours to signal your complete surrender. All military vessels will power down their weapons. All civilian leaders will gather in your capital city's main square. When we arrive, you will kneel. This is not a negotiation. This is inevitability. Comply and your people will be allowed to continue existing. Resist and we will demonstrate why 17 species chose submission over extinction." The message ended. Nobody spoke. Aria looked around at the faces of her crew. They were scared. They had every right to be. The defensive fleet under her command consisted of 12 ships. 12 against 53. The math was brutal and simple. "Get me Admiral Stone," she said, "and wake up the governor. Everyone needs to hear this." Within the hour, the conference room was packed. Governor Harris looked like he had aged 10 years and 10 minutes. Admiral Stone, Aria's mentor and the man who had taught her everything she knew about space combat, sat with his hands folded on the table. His face was calm, but his knuckles were white. Dr. Neil Park, the colony's top expert on alien cultures, was already pulling up files on his tablet. "Draxians," Neil said without preamble. "I've studied them for years. They showed up on the galactic stage about 2 centuries ago. Since then, they've absorbed 17 different species into their empire. They don't exterminate populations. They subjugate them. Break their spirit, force them into a hierarchy where Draxians are always on top." "How do they do it?" Governor Harris asked. His voice shook slightly. "Overwhelming force and psychological warfare. They pick targets they can easily defeat, then make the surrender as humiliating as possible. Public kneeling ceremonies. Oaths of submission. They want to break the will to resist before the first shot is ever fired." Aria leaned forward. "Have any species successfully resisted them?" Neil shook his head. "Not that I know of. Usually the numbers are so lopsided that resistance seems insane. Most planets surrender within days. We have 48 hours, Admiral Stone said. What are our options? Governor Harris spread his hands. We have 40,000 people on this colony, families, children. If we fight and lose, Crane made it clear what happens. If we surrender, Arya said slowly, we're teaching humanity that all it takes is a big enough stick to make us kneel. Today it's Meridian. Tomorrow it's every human colony in this sector. Eventually it's Earth itself. That's easy to say when it's not your children in the firing line, Harris snapped. Arya met his eyes. She understood his fear. She had lost her own family to an alien raid 12 years ago. She knew exactly what was at stake. But she also knew that some things were worth standing for. I'm not saying we throw lives away, she said quietly. I'm saying we need time to find another option. Something they won't expect, like what? Harris demanded. We're outnumbered 5-1. Our ships are smaller, slower, and less armed. This isn't a fair fight. No, Arya agreed. It's not. But fair fights are for people who play by the rules. We need to change the game. Admiral Stone raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking? Neil, tell me about Draxian culture. What matters to them? The scientist looked surprised but pulled up his notes. Hierarchy is everything. Status is determined by displays of strength and dominance. Honor matters, but their definition of honor is different from ours. To them, honor comes from asserting superiority over inferiors. What about challenges? Arya asked. Do they have any tradition of single combat? Trial by battle? Neil nodded slowly. Yes, actually. In their history, disputes between noble houses were sometimes settled by champion combat. It prevented costly wars, but that's ancient history. They haven't used it in centuries. But the tradition exists, Arya said. It's part of their cultural foundation. Admiral Stone smiled grimly. He knew that look on her face. You want to challenge them? Not exactly. I want to put General Crane in a position where he has to prove he's worthy of our surrender. Right now he's treating us like insects, like we're beneath notice. What if we force him to acknowledge us as worthy opponents? He has 53 warships, Harris said. Why would he care what we think? Because he's broadcasting his demand across this entire sector. Other species are watching. If a tiny human colony calls him a coward who hides behind superior numbers, it damages his reputation. The Draxian culture Neil described values strength, but it also values the appearance of strength. If we make him look weak in front of potential subjects, it undermines his entire strategy. The room was silent. Admiral Stone rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. It's risky. It could make him angry enough to attack immediately. Or it could buy us time, Arya countered. And if we're lucky, it might split their forces, create internal dissent. These Draxians aren't mindless drones. They have egos, politics, ambitions. We just need to find the cracks. Governor Harris looked physically ill. And if this gamble fails? If you provoke them and they attack? Arya stood up and walked to the window. Below, she could see the colony's central district. Lights were coming on as evening fell. People were going about their lives unaware that everything was about to change. She thought about her sister's family down there. Her nephew was only 6 years old. He loved drawing pictures of spaceships. She turned back to the room. If we kneel now, those people down there will spend the rest of their lives on their knees. Their children will grow up as subjects of an empire that sees them as property, and every other human colony out here will know that when it mattered, we chose fear over freedom. You're asking them to risk death for pride, Harris said. No, Arya replied. I'm asking them to risk death for the right to stand up. There's a difference. Admiral Stone stood slowly. He looked old in that moment, tired from decades of service, but his eyes were sharp as ever. What do you need from me? Permission to contact General Crane directly. I want to request a meeting. He'll see it as surrender. Let him. I want him overconfident when I walk onto his ship. Neil's head snapped up. You're going over there alone? I'm going to look him in the eye and challenge his entire worldview. And I'm going to do it on his flagship in front of his officers where he can't hide behind his fleet. They could kill you on the spot, Harris protested. Arya smiled without humor. They could, but they won't. Killing an unarmed emissary would make them look weak, and if there's one thing I've learned from Neil's research, it's that Draxians care more about appearances than almost anything else. They'll want me alive to witness their victory. She looked around the room at each face in turn. I know this is insane. I know the odds are terrible, but I also know that humanity didn't get this far by giving up when things looked bad. We adapt, we improvise. We find solutions that no one else would even consider. That's what I'm going to do. Admiral Stone nodded slowly. I'll support your plan. But Arya, if this goes wrong, everything goes wrong anyway, she said simply. At least this way, we go down swinging. Governor Harris closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked like he had made the hardest decision of his life. 48 hours. Do what you can. Arya nodded and left the conference room. She had a message to compose and a general to confront. The next 2 days would determine whether humanity stood or fell in this corner of the galaxy. Outside the window, the Draxian fleet waited in the darkness like a promise of doom. The shuttle ride to the Draxian flagship took 30 minutes, but it felt like 30 hours. Arya wore her formal uniform, no weapons, no armor. Just cloth and buttons and the small communication device hidden in her collar that would broadcast everything back to Meridian. She wanted the Draxians to find it. She wanted them to know that whatever happened next would be witnessed. The docking bay was enormous, designed to make visitors feel small. It worked. The ceiling stretched up into shadows and rows of Draxian soldiers lined the walkway. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with gray skin covered in natural armor plating that looked like stone. Their eyes glowed faintly amber in the dim light. They did not look at her. They stared straight ahead, weapons held at attention. A Draxian officer approached. He was slightly smaller than the soldiers, wearing robes instead of armor. I am Commander Vale. General Crane will see you now. Follow. She followed. The corridors of the ship were built for giants, and she felt like a child walking through them. Everything was designed to intimidate. The walls were covered in carvings showing Draxian victories over other species. She recognized a few of them from Neil's briefings. Each scene showed the same thing. Aliens on their knees, Draxians standing over them. They entered a massive chamber that could only be described as a throne room. The ceiling was at least 50 feet high. Pillars lined the walls, each one carved with more conquest scenes. At the far end, on a raised platform, General Crane sat on a chair made of dark metal. Around him stood at least 20 officers and guards. Every eye in the room turned to watch Arya's long walk across the floor. She kept her pace steady, her face calm. She had practiced this. No matter what she felt inside, she would not show weakness. General Crane was massive even by Draxian standards. His armor was ornate, decorated with symbols that Neil had said represented military honors. His face was broad and angular, with deep-set eyes that studied her with obvious amusement. When he spoke, his voice filled the entire chamber. "A human comes to my ship, alone and unarmed. I assume you bring your surrender." Arya stopped at the base of the platform. She did not kneel. She stood straight, looked directly at him, and spoke in a clear voice. "I bring questions." The room fell silent. Several officers shifted uncomfortably. Crane's amusement deepened. "Questions? You have 48 hours to surrender, and you waste time with questions? I need to understand something," Arya said. "You demand that humanity kneel to you, that we perform a ceremony of submission in front of all our people. You say this is inevitable. But I wonder, General Crane, what have you done to earn such submission?" The amusement vanished from Crane's face. "I command 53 warships. I have conquered 17 species. I offer you the choice between servitude and extinction. That is what I have earned." "So you have big ships and you attack smaller forces," Arya said calmly. "That demonstrates you can count." "It does not demonstrate worthiness." One of the officers made a sound like a hiss. Crane raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes narrowed. "You dare question my worthiness? I who have brought entire civilizations to heel?" "Civilizations that could not defend themselves," Arya replied. "Tell me, General, of these 17 species you conquered, how many had military strength equal to yours?" "None," Crane said flatly. "That is the point. The strong dominate the weak. This is the natural order." "Then you have never actually proven your strength," Arya said. "You have only proven you can bully those weaker than you. In human culture, we have a word for someone who only picks fights they know they can win. We call them cowards." The room erupted. Officers shouted in their own language. Guards moved forward. Crane's face darkened with rage. But he raised his hand again and everyone froze. He stood slowly, his full height making him tower over everyone else in the room. "You call me a coward," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You whose fleet is outnumbered 5-1. You whose colony world will burn if I give the order. You stand in my throne room surrounded by my warriors and call me a coward." "I call it as I see it," Arya said. "You speak of honor and strength, but you hide behind overwhelming numbers. You demand respect without earning it. In Draxian tradition, or so I understand, true warriors prove themselves against worthy opponents. They do not simply attack the helpless and call it victory." Crane descended the steps, each footfall echoing in the chamber. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to crane her neck to look up at him. She could smell something like hot stone and metal. "You know our traditions," he said slowly. "I do my research. Then you know that I could kill you where you stand and no one would question it. You insulted me. You questioned my honor. By our laws, your life is forfeit." "By your laws," Arya agreed. "But if you kill an unarmed diplomat who came here under flag of truce, what does that say about your honor? What does it say to all the species watching this encounter? That the mighty General Crane was so threatened by words from a human that he had to silence her?" Crane stared at her. The silence stretched. Then unexpectedly he laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the walls. "You are either very brave or very stupid," he said. "Perhaps both. Very well. You want me to prove my worthiness? How do you suggest I do that?" This was the moment. Everything depended on the next words. "Trial by combat," Arya said. "Ancient Draxian tradition. When two houses disputed, they would send champions. Single combat to settle the matter without pointless war. You want humanity to kneel? Prove you deserve it. Send your best pilot against ours. Single ship combat in neutral space. If you win, we surrender as you demand. If we win, you withdraw and leave this system in peace." The officers erupted again, but this time the shouting was directed at Crane. not Arya. She caught fragments of translation from her device. Some were outraged at the suggestion, others seemed intrigued. One voice rose above the rest, belonging to a younger officer with fewer decorations. General, the ancient trials are sacred tradition. To refuse such a challenge would be seen as weakness by the other houses. Crane silenced him with a look, but Arya could see the calculation happening behind those amber eyes. He was thinking about politics, about appearances, about what other Draxians would say if he rejected a formal challenge. You understand, he said slowly, that our technology is superior. Our pilots are trained from birth. Your champion will die. Maybe, Arya said. But at least you will have proven your strength honestly. And when my people kneel, they will kneel to a warrior, not a bully. Crane was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Very well. I accept your challenge. We will meet in 3 days in the asteroid field at the edge of this system. Single ship combat. No interference from other vessels. The battle will be broadcast to all interested parties. When your champion falls, your people will perform the submission ceremony. And when your champion falls, you withdraw. He will not fall, Crane said with absolute certainty. Captain Rail has never lost a combat. He has destroyed ships from 6 different species. Your pilot will be his 23rd kill. Arya bowed slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement rather than submission. 3 days, then. May the best pilot win. As she turned to leave, Crane spoke again. Human, you show courage I did not expect from your species. It is almost a pity that I must break you. You would have made an interesting servant. Arya looked back at him. We'll see who breaks, General. She walked back across the long chamber, feeling every eye on her. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her stride steady. The guards did not stop her. Commander Vale escorted her back to the docking bay in silence. Only when her shuttle had detached and turned back toward Meridian did she allow herself to shake. She had done it. She had bought them 3 more days and turned this into a public spectacle. But she had also committed them to a fight where the odds were still terrible. Her communicator crackled. Admiral Stone's voice came through. We heard everything. That was either the bravest or most insane thing I've ever witnessed. Probably both, Arya admitted. Did you find a pilot? Owen Cross volunteered before you even made it back to the shuttle. He's already running simulations. Owen, she should have known. The young lieutenant had been asking for a chance to prove himself for months. Now he would get that chance and it might cost him his life. Tell him to meet me in the simulator bay in 2 hours, she said. And get Rosa Silva working on ship modifications. We have 3 days to turn our fighter into something that can match Draxian technology. Arya, Stone said quietly, you know this is still almost impossible. Almost impossible is better than completely impossible, she replied. And almost is all we need. We're humans, Admiral. We specialize in almost. She guided the shuttle toward home, watching the colony lights grow brighter ahead. Somewhere down there, people were going about their lives, not knowing that their fate would be decided by a single pilot in 3 days. But they would not be kneeling. Not yet, maybe not ever. That had to count for something. The asteroid field looked like a graveyard of planets. Massive rocks tumbled slowly through space, some small as houses, others large as cities. Between them, streams of ice and dust caught the distant sunlight, creating curtains of glittering particles. The gas giant beyond cast everything in shades of orange and brown, its massive storms visible even from this distance. Owen Cross checked his instruments for the 20th time. Everything showed green. The fighter hummed around him, familiar and alien at the same time. Rosa Silva had spent 72 hours rebuilding half the systems. The ship looked the same from outside, but inside it was something new, something desperate and clever and completely untested. How are you feeling? Arya's voice came through his helmet speakers. Like I'm about to fight a demigod in a tin can, Owen replied honestly. Good. Healthy fear keeps you sharp. Remember the plan. Don't try to outgun him. Don't try to outrun him. Use the environment. Stay alive long enough to make him angry. And when he's angry, people make mistakes when they're angry. Even Draxians. Owen could see the observation vessels gathering at safe distance. Ships from a dozen species had arrived to watch. The Draxian flagship hung at the edge of the field, dark and massive. His own command ship was on the opposite side, much smaller but bristling with sensors recording everything. Incoming, his computer announced. A new ship appeared on sensors, dropping out of faster-than-light travel with practiced precision. The Draxian fighter was beautiful in a deadly way. Smooth black hull, sweeping lines, weapons ports that glowed faint blue. It moved through the asteroids like a shark through water. "That's Captain Rail," Arya said quietly. Neil pulled his combat records. 22 confirmed kills, all in single combat. "He's good, Owen. Very good. Thanks for the pep talk. I'm not finished. He's good, but he's predictable. He's won every fight the same way. Overwhelming firepower in the opening minutes. He expects opponents to panic and make mistakes. Don't give him that. Copy that. Survive. Don't panic. Make him panic instead." "Exactly. And Owen, we're all watching. We're all counting on you. No pressure then." A neutral voice filled all communication channels, some automated system broadcasting to every ship in the area. Combat trial commencing in 60 seconds. Single ship engagement. Victory condition: disable opponent's vessel. Destruction of opponent's vessel is permitted but not required. Interference from external vessels will result in immediate disqualification. "Acknowledge compliance," and acknowledged, Owen said. A moment later, a deeper voice spoke. Captain Rail, speaking English with that same accent General Crane had used. "Acknowledged. Human pilot, you have my respect for accepting this challenge. I will make your death quick." "Appreciate the thought," Owen replied. "But I'm planning to make your defeat slow." Silence. Then what might have been a laugh. "You have courage. It will not save you." The countdown reached 0. Owen's hands moved across controls and his fighter surged forward. Immediately, warning alarms screamed. Rail had fired, and the shots were faster than anything Owen had trained against. He threw his ship into a spiral, diving beneath a spinning asteroid. Weapons fire carved glowing lines through space where he had been a second before. "He's not wasting time," Owen muttered, pushing the engines hard. The modifications Rosa had made were already showing results. His ship was more responsive, turning tighter than it should have been able to. But Rail's ship was still faster. Another volley of shots forced Owen behind a cluster of smaller rocks. He felt impacts as debris from the shattered asteroids hit his shields. The shield indicator flickered but held. "Barely. He's hurting you," Arya warned. "Watch your positioning." She was right. Rail was driving him toward a clear area where there was no cover. The Draxian pilot was experienced enough to know that the human's only advantage was the environment. Take that away and this would be over in seconds. Owen made a decision. Instead of fleeing from the clear area, he accelerated toward it. His fingers danced across a new control Rosa had installed, something she had called the surprise. The fighter's hull began to emit a specific electromagnetic frequency, one that resonated with the magnetic field of the gas giant nearby. Instantly, every loose metallic particle in the area began drifting toward his ship. Not fast, but enough to create a cloud of reflective debris around him. Sensor ghosts. Dozens of false targets. Rail's next volley scattered across the cloud, hitting decoys instead of the real ship. Owen used the confusion to brake hard to the left, back into the asteroid field. He was breathing hard, adrenaline making everything sharp and clear. "That bought you 10 seconds, Arya said. "He's adapting. Switching to thermal tracking." "Of course he is." Owen spun around a large asteroid, using its mass to block line of sight. He needed to think. Rail was better than him in almost every way. Better ship, better weapons, better training. The only advantage Owen had was that Rail thought he knew how humans fought. Time to teach him differently. Owen cut his engines completely and let momentum carry him into the shadow of the largest asteroid in the field. It was massive, several miles across, tumbling slowly. He matched its rotation, essentially hiding on its surface. His ship's temperature dropped quickly in the shadow. Thermal signature fading. "What are you doing?" Arya asked. "Something stupid. Tell Rosa to get ready to reroute everything to engines on my mark." He waited. Seconds crawled past. On his sensors, he could see Rail's ship moving through the field, searching. The Draxian was being cautious now, not wanting to fall into a trap. Good. Caution would slow him down. Rail passed within 200 meters of Owen's position, but the asteroid's mass and the cold shadow kept Owen hidden. As soon as the Draxian ship moved past, Owen fired his positioning thrusters, nothing more, just enough to drift away from the asteroid into a clear line behind Rail. Then he lit up his engines at full power and fired everything he had. The surprise worked for exactly 3 seconds. His shots hammered into Rail's rear shields, causing them to flare brilliant blue. But Rail's reaction was instant and professional. The Draxian ship rolled, angled shields, and returned fire in one smooth motion. Owen barely got behind another asteroid before weapons fire would have cut him in half. Now he's angry, Arya observed. She was right. Rail's tactics changed. He was no longer hurting. He was hunting. The Draxian ship came at Owen head-on, weapons blazing. Owen dove, weaved, used every trick he knew. His shields were failing, down to 30%. 20. One hit would end this. He flew into a cluster of asteroids, deliberately choosing a path that was too narrow, too dangerous. He scraped along rock faces, dodged spinning debris. Behind him, Rail followed. The Draxian ship was larger, less maneuverable in tight spaces. Owen heard the impacts as Rail's ship clipped asteroids, shields flaring with each hit. Good. Trade speed for damage. Make him work for this. They emerged from the cluster simultaneously, and for a moment they were in open space facing each other. Both ships were damaged now. Owen's shields were gone. Rail's shields were down to 40%. First to land a clean hit would win. They fired together. Owen's reflexes were good, but Rail's were better. The Draxian pilot rolled at the last instant, and Owen's shots missed by meters. Rail's shots did not miss. They hit Owen's ship along the left side, tearing through hull plating. Warning alarm screamed. His left engine died. Weapons offline. Owen. Arya's voice was sharp with concern. Still here, he gasped. His ship was tumbling now, one engine fighting to stabilize while the other was dead weight. Rail's fighter circled slowly, a predator watching wounded prey. Human pilot. Rail's voice was almost respectful now. You fought well. Better than I expected. But this is finished. Power down and I will not destroy you completely. Owen's hands moved over controls, assessing damage. Life support good. Computer good. Weapons gone. One engine dead. Nothing left to fight with except the environment. He checked his position. Behind him, the gas giant's gravity well was pulling at his crippled ship. And beyond the giant, barely visible, one of its moons was rising into view. A moon with a thick atmosphere and powerful magnetic fields, according to the briefing. Rosa, Owen said quietly. Remember that crazy idea you mentioned? The one with the magnetic pulse? The one I said would probably destroy the ship? Rosa's voice came through. That's the one. How do I trigger it? Owen, that was theoretical. It might not work. And even if it does, your ship will be dead in space afterward. My ship is already dying. Tell me how. Rosa gave him instructions. They were complex and required rerouting power in ways that would leave him completely helpless afterward. But if it worked, just for a moment, he could create an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disable electronics at close range. The problem was range. He needed to be within 50 meters of Rail's ship. And Rail was keeping his distance now, preparing for a final shot. Owen made his ship spin as if losing control. He killed his remaining engine, let his fighter tumble toward the gas giant, made it look like his navigation was failing, made it look like he was helpless. Rail moved closer to finish it. 40 meters, 30. Come on, Owen whispered. Just a little closer. I'm beaten. You've won. Come see your prize, 20 meters. Rail's ship hung there, weapons charging for the kill shot. Owen could see the Draxian's fighter in perfect detail now. Could see the glow. Now, Owen shouted. His hands executed Rosa's sequence. Every power system in his ship redirected in an instant, channeling through the modified electromagnets. The pulse erupted outward, invisible but devastating to electronics. His own ship went completely dark immediately. Every screen, every control, everything died. But so did Rail's. For 5 seconds, both fighters drifted in space completely dead. Then backup systems began coming online. Owen's ship remained dark, but Rail's screens flickered on. No, it had failed. Rail would recover first, and Owen had nothing left. Then Owen saw something that made him smile. Rail's engines were offline. His weapons were offline. The Draxian ship was drifting. Backup power barely sufficient to maintain life support. The pulse had worked after all, just differently than expected. It had not disabled everything, but it had disabled enough. Both ships were helpless now, drifting toward the gas giant's gravity well. The difference was that Owen had anticipated this. His ship was lighter with less momentum. Rail's larger ship was drifting faster. Admiral, Owen said into the silent communication system, not knowing if anyone could hear. I need pickup. Both fighters are disabled. Combat is over. The neutral voice spoke again, breaking the silence. Both combat vessels disabled. Trial concludes with tactical draw, per ancient protocols. Such outcomes are resolved through immediate negotiation between commanders. Owen watched through his dying ship's windows as recovery vessels began moving toward both fighters. He had not won, but more importantly, Rail had not won either. The mighty Draxian champion had been fought to a standstill by a human in an inferior ship. As the recovery ship's magnetic grapples locked onto his fighter, Owen closed his eyes. Every muscle ached. His hands were shaking from adrenaline. But he was alive, and humanity was still standing. General Crane's face filled every screen in the command center, and his expression promised death. The transmission had come through 5 minutes after both fighters had been recovered. No preamble, no negotiation, just rage. You think this changes anything? Crane's voice shook with fury. A draw means nothing. The combat was inconclusive due to mechanical failure on both sides. It proves nothing about worthiness. My fleet advances on your colony in 1 hour. You will kneel or you will burn. The transmission ended. Governor Harris turned to Arya, his face pale. He's breaking his word. In front of everyone. I know, Arya said calmly. She had expected this. Had counted on it, actually. She looked at Dr. Neal, who was already working at his console. How many species are watching? 47 different vessels in observation range, Neal replied, including 3 Draxian diplomatic ships that are not part of Crane's fleet. They're seeing everything. Good. Make sure this next transmission reaches everyone. Arya stood and walked to the communication station. She took a deep breath, then opened a channel to every ship in the system. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. Attention all observers. You have witnessed General Crane's decision to break his oath. The trial by combat ended in a draw, which by ancient Draxian law requires negotiation, not violence. Instead, Crane chooses to attack. He demanded we kneel to prove his superiority. But when we proved ourselves equal in combat, he rejected the outcome. This is not the action of an honorable warrior. This is the action of a tyrant who cannot accept anything less than absolute dominance. She paused, letting her words sink in. Let the record show that humanity offered Crane every chance to prove his worthiness through honorable means. He chose dishonor instead. Whatever happens next, the galaxy will know the truth about Draxian honor. Admiral Stone moved beside her as she closed the channel. That was a declaration of war. He declared war the moment he entered our system, Arya replied. I'm just making sure everyone knows what kind of enemy we're facing. Neal, what are the Draxian diplomatic ships doing? Sending encrypted transmissions back to their home world, Neal said. Heavy traffic. They're not happy about this. Political pressure takes time, Governor Harris said desperately. Time we don't have. In 55 minutes, that fleet reaches firing range of our colony. Arya turned to Admiral Stone. Is the defensive grid ready? The old admiral nodded. Rosa has been working nonstop. The asteroid field is wired with everything we could salvage, steal, or improvise. It won't stop them, but it will hurt them. That's all we need. Hurt them enough, frustrate them enough, and maybe some of those Draxian officers start questioning their orders. Arya pulled up tactical displays. We need to turn this into a grinding fight. Make every meter they advance cost them. Make it so bloody and pointless that even Crane's own people start to wonder if this is worth it. We're still outnumbered, Harris reminded her. Yes, but we're fighting in our space, by our rules now. Crane wanted to make an example of us. Instead, we're going to make an example of him. The hour passed too quickly. Warning alarms announced the Draxian fleet's advance. 53 warships moving in perfect formation. A wall of metal and weapons heading straight for Meridian. They looked unstoppable. But they had to pass through the asteroid field first. Arya watched from the command ship as the Draxian fleet entered the field. Their formation was textbook perfect. Ships spaced to provide mutual support while maintaining clear firing lanes. Crane was taking no chances. Wait for it, Arya murmured. Let them get comfortable. The Draxian fleet moved deeper into the asteroids. Their sensors would be detecting the human defensive positions now. The 12 human ships were spread throughout the field, using asteroids as cover. It looked like a desperate defensive line. It was not. Now, Arya said quietly, Rosa triggered the first wave of mines. They had been disguised as asteroids hidden among thousands of real rocks. 73 explosive devices detonated simultaneously throughout the Draxian formation. The mines were not powerful enough to destroy warships, but they shattered asteroids into deadly shrapnel clouds. Debris hammered into Draxian shields at incredible velocity. The perfect formation broke. Ships scattered, trying to avoid the cascading destruction. In the chaos, the human ships opened fire, not at the Draxian vessels, but at the asteroids themselves. Every shot shattered more rock, creating more debris, more chaos. "They can't see us properly," Owen reported from his new fighter. He had recovered enough to fly again, though his injuries made every movement painful. All that dust and debris is fouling their sensors. "Hit and run tactics," Arya ordered. "Don't engage directly. Shoot asteroids near them, create more confusion, then fall back." The human ships moved through the field like ghosts, appearing just long enough to fire, then vanishing back into the debris clouds. The Draxians fired back, but they were shooting at sensor shadows and false contacts. Every missed shot hit asteroids instead, creating even more chaos. An hour into the battle, the Draxians had barely advanced 3 kilometers. They had lost no ships, but several were showing damage from debris impacts. Their shields were being worn down by constant small impacts, death by 1,000 cuts. Arya monitored the communication channels. She could hear the frustration in Draxian transmissions, officers reporting to Crane, requesting new orders, questioning the advance through the field. "They want to go around," Admiral Stone observed. "Avoid the field entirely. Let's make sure that looks even worse." Arya activated the second part of the plan. The human ships repositioned, moving to flank positions that would threaten any Draxian vessels that tried to bypass the field. It forced Crane to either split his forces or continue the slow grind forward. He chose to grind forward, and Arya knew why. Pride. Crane could not afford to look weak by avoiding a fight. He had declared this would be easy. Changing tactics now would be admitting he had underestimated the humans. The battle continued for 6 more hours. The Draxian fleet advanced 10 kilometers, a third of the distance to Meridian. But the cost was mounting. 2 Draxian ships had taken critical damage and been forced to withdraw. Every other ship showed varying levels of damage. The debris clouds were so thick now that navigation was hazardous for everyone. Human losses were mounting too. 3 ships destroyed, 2 more too damaged to continue fighting. Half the defensive force gone. But they had traded 3 ships for 2 of the enemies and had slowed an entire fleet to a crawl. "We can't keep this up," Governor Harris said, watching the displays. "We're running out of ships." "We're running out of time," Arya corrected. "But so is Crane. Look at his formation." The Draxian fleet was stretched out now, no longer the tight wall of steel it had been. Ships were separated by the debris fields, unable to support each other effectively. The mighty armada looked ragged and frustrated. "Incoming transmission," the communication officer announced.
"It's not from Crane, it's from Captain Rail."
Arya felt her pulse quicken. "Put it through." "Private channel." Rail's face appeared on her personal screen. The Draxian pilot looked tired, and there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Doubt. "Captain Blake," he said quietly. "I am transmitting without General Crane's knowledge. This is dangerous for me, but I must speak." "I'm listening." "What you said after the trial was correct. Crane has dishonored us. He breaks ancient laws and makes mockery of our traditions. Many of us see this now." Rail paused. "But we are bound by duty. We cannot simply refuse orders. Then why contact me?" "Because this battle serves no purpose. We advance, you resist, and both sides bleed for what? So Crane can prove a point? So he can force people to kneel who will never truly submit?" Rail's voice carried frustration. "You humans fight like nothing I have seen before. You should not be able to stop us, yet here we sit, trapped in rocks and dust, losing ships to mines and debris." Arya chose her words carefully. "What are you asking for, Captain?" "I do not know. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps I simply needed to tell someone that not all Draxians support this madness." He leaned closer to his screen. "But know this. There are others who feel as I do. If something were to change, if there were a reason to question Crane's command, some of us might not stand with him." The transmission ended. Arya stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. Captain Rail had just told her that there were cracks in Draxian unity. He had practically invited her to exploit them. Admiral Stone had been listening. "That's an opportunity. Or a trap," Governor Harris warned. "No," Dr. Neal said, looking up from his console. "I don't think so." Rail fought Owen honorably. He could have destroyed the ship completely, but chose not to. And what he said about Draxian culture is accurate. Crane is violating their values, and that matters to some of them. Arya made a decision. Neil, prepare a broadcast. Something that speaks directly to Draxian warriors about honor and duty. Not propaganda, just truth. Stone, prepare our remaining ships for one final defensive push. We need to hold them here for another 12 hours. Why 12 hours? Harris asked. Because that's how long it will take for the political pressure from those diplomatic ships to reach the Draxian High Command. And because that's how long we need to push Crane into making a mistake big enough that his own people turn on him. The battle ground on through the night. The Draxian advance slowed to a crawl as human ships continued their harassment. Every hour that passed, Arya broadcast another message. Not to Crane, but to his warriors. She spoke about honor, about the difference between strength and brutality, about whether serving an unjust order was truly duty or simply cowardice. She did not know if anyone was listening, but somewhere in that fleet she hoped Captain Rail was hearing her words. And she hoped he was not alone. As dawn broke over Meridian, the Draxian fleet sat 15 kilometers into the asteroid field. They had advanced halfway to the colony. They had lost 5 ships. The human defensive force was down to 4 vessels. But they were still fighting, still standing. And somewhere in the Draxian fleet, seeds of doubt were growing. The real battle was just beginning. The message from the Draxian homeworld arrived during the 28th hour of the battle. It was not addressed to Crane directly, but to a High Council observer named Ornis who had been traveling with the fleet. The transmission was encrypted, but human intelligence had gotten very good at breaking Draxian codes over the past day of desperate innovation. Dr. Neil read the decoded message aloud, his voice barely hiding his excitement. The High Council is concerned about reports reaching the homeworld. Questions are being raised about the honorable conduct of this campaign. Observer Ornis is instructed to assess the situation personally and provide recommendations. Arya looked up from the tactical display, so the council is not ordering Crane to stop. They're just expressing concern. That's huge in Draxian politics, Neil explained. The council never questions a general during active operations unless they are considering removing him. This is a warning shot, Admiral Stone frowned. Will Crane care? He seems pretty committed to this attack. That's what worries me, Arya said. A rational commander would pause and reassess. But Crane is operating on pride now. He's invested too much to back down, and backing down would destroy his reputation. Governor Harris, who had barely slept since the battle began, rubbed his face wearily. So what do? We have 4 ships left. They still have 48. Even if Crane's position is weakening politically, he can still destroy us militarily. Arya had been thinking about this all night. The broadcast to the Draxian fleet had been getting responses, coded messages from junior officers expressing doubt. Captain Rail had sent 2 more transmissions, each more bold than the last. There was a mutiny brewing in that fleet, but it needed something to push it over the edge. It needed someone to stand up to Crane publicly and survive. I'm going back to the flagship, Arya announced. Everyone stared at her. Stone spoke first. Absolutely not. He'll kill you the moment you step on his ship. You embarrassed him in front of his fleet. You've been broadcasting messages that undermine his authority. You're his enemy now. Exactly. Which is why I'm the only one who can do this. Arya pulled up a new display showing the positions of all the observation vessels. There are now 72 ships watching this battle. The entire galaxy is paying attention. If Crane kills an unarmed diplomat who comes under a flag of truce on camera, in front of everyone including his own High Council observer, he's finished. And if he does it anyway, Harris demanded. Then he's a murderer and his own people will turn on him, Arya said calmly. Either way, this ends. We can't win through military force. We can only win by breaking Crane's hold on his fleet. This is insane, Stone protested. It's desperate, Arya corrected. There's a difference. Neil, prepare a transmission requesting safe passage to the flagship. Make sure Observer Ornis receives it directly. Force him to either grant safe passage or refuse it publicly. Dr. Neil worked quickly, crafting a message that used formal Draxian protocols and invoked ancient traditions of diplomatic immunity. When it went out, every observer ship received a copy. The pressure on Ornis was enormous. The response came within minutes. Observer Ornis himself appeared on screen, his face unreadable. He was older than Crane, with more elaborate markings that indicated higher rank or status. His voice was measured and formal. Captain Blake, your request for safe passage is acknowledged. Under ancient law, diplomatic immunity is granted. You may approach the flagship. General Crane has been informed and will receive you. The transmission ended. Arya caught the subtle phrasing. Ornis had not said Crane agreed to the meeting. He had simply informed Crane that it was happening and that ancient law protected her. It was a power play, the High Council asserting authority over a general in the field. Crane would be furious. Perfect. The shuttle ride to the flagship was even more tense than the first time. Arya wore her uniform again, but this time it showed damage from the battle. There was a burn mark on her left sleeve where a console had exploded near her. She wore it deliberately. Let them see that she had been in the fight, not hiding behind others. The docking bay was different this time. The guards looked exhausted. Battle damage was visible on the walls where debris impacts had penetrated the outer hull. The Draxian fleet might not have lost many ships, but every vessel had been battered by the grinding combat in the asteroid field. Commander Vale met her again, but his attitude was different. Less arrogant, more wary. He escorted her through corridors that now showed signs of emergency repairs. The carvings of conquest looked less impressive when surrounded by evidence of struggle. The throne room was fuller than before. At least 40 officers were present, including Observer Ornis, who stood to one side with his own retinue, and Captain Rail, who met her eyes briefly with an expression she could not read. General Crane sat on his throne, but his posture was rigid with anger. His eyes tracked her approach with barely contained fury. "You dare come here again," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You who have killed my warriors. You who have poisoned my fleet with your words. You who have made a mockery of Draxian strength." Arya stopped at the base of the platform. She did not kneel. She stood straight and spoke clearly. "I come because this battle serves no purpose except pride. You have lost 5 ships trying to advance 15 kilometers. At this rate, you will lose half your fleet before you reach Meridian. And even if you do reach it, even if you force us to kneel, what will you have gained? A colony of people who will never truly submit. A reputation as the general who needed 3 days and massive losses to conquer a handful of human ships." The room erupted in angry shouts, but Crane silenced them with a raised hand. He stood slowly, descending the steps. Each footfall echoed in the sudden quiet. "You speak of my reputation," he said softly. "My reputation was flawless before you. 17 species knelt. 17 species learned their place. Now because of you, because of your resistance, other species watch and wonder if they too could defy us." "Good," Arya said simply. "Let them wonder. Let them question. Because the alternative is a galaxy ruled by fear, where the strong prey on the weak without challenge. Is that the legacy you want? Is that the honor you claim to represent?" Crane's hand moved to his weapon. Several officers gasped. Observer Ornis stepped forward. "General Crane," Ornis said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Remember where you are. Remember who watches." Crane froze. His hand remained on his weapon, but he did not draw it. The moment stretched, and Arya could see the calculation in his eyes. He wanted to kill her, wanted it badly enough that his entire body shook with restraint, but he could not. Not with Ornis present, not with 72 observer ships recording everything. Arya pressed her advantage. She turned away from Crane and addressed the room directly, speaking in Draxian so there could be no misunderstanding. Dr. Neal had taught her the formal phrases. "Warriors of Draxia, I speak to you not as an enemy, but as someone who respects true strength. Your traditions speak of honor through worthy combat. Your history tells of warriors who proved themselves against equals, not through overwhelming the helpless. You pride yourselves on a code that values courage and integrity." She looked at each officer in turn. "But what honor is there in this battle? What courage in continuing an attack that was founded on a broken oath? Your general demanded we kneel without proving his worthiness. When we fought him to a draw, he rejected the outcome and attacked anyway. Every warrior here knows this violates your deepest traditions." "Silence!" Crane roared. "You will not speak to my warriors." "Why not?" Arya countered, switching back to English but keeping her voice loud enough for all to hear. "Are you afraid they will listen? Afraid they will realize that following unjust orders is not duty. It is simply fear. True courage is standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, even when it means defying your superior." Captain Rail spoke then, his voice cutting through the tension. "She speaks truth, General Crane." Every head turned toward him. Rail stood straighter, his hand resting on his weapon, not threateningly, but with purpose. "I have served you faithfully. I have won every combat you assigned me, but I cannot serve dishonor. This campaign violates every principle we claim to hold sacred. You dare, Crane breathed. You dare challenge me? I challenge the orders, Rail said firmly. Not your person, but your decisions, as is my right under the Code of Warriors. I invoke the right of question. The room exploded into chaos. Officers shouted, some supporting Rail, others condemning him. Arya stood silent, watching her gambit unfold. The right of question was a rarely used tradition that Dr. Neal had discovered in his research. It allowed subordinate officers to formally challenge a commander's decision if they believed it violated Draxian honor codes. Observer Ornis raised his hands, and gradually the room quieted. The right of question has been invoked. This is serious. General Crane, you must respond according to tradition. Crane's face had gone from angry to something darker. Captain Rail, you have betrayed me. You have sided with the enemy. I have sided with honor, Rail replied. And I am not alone. One by one, other officers stepped forward. Not all of them, perhaps not even half. But enough. 12 officers moved to stand with Rail, their meaning clear. Crane looked at them, and for the first time Arya saw something like fear in his eyes. Not fear of death, but fear of losing control. His authority was crumbling in front of everyone. This is mutiny, Crane said quietly. This is correction, Observer Ornis said firmly. General Crane, by the authority of the High Council, you are hereby relieved of command pending investigation into the conduct of this campaign. Captain Rail will assume temporary command and negotiate a resolution to this conflict. Crane stood frozen, his world collapsing around him. Then, with a roar of pure rage, he drew his weapon and aimed it not at Rail, not at Ornis, but at Arya. If I fall, you fall with me. Everything happened at once. Rail drew his own weapon. Other officers moved. Arya stood still, knowing that running would accomplish nothing. The shot never came. Crane stood with his weapon raised, but his hand was shaking. The entire galaxy was watching. If he fired, he would prove everything Arya had said about him. He would become the monster, the tyrant, the murderer. Slowly his hand lowered. The weapon dropped to the floor. Crane looked at Arya one last time, and his voice was almost quiet. You destroyed me with words. With ideas. Without firing a shot. No, Arya said gently. You destroyed yourself by forgetting that true strength comes from within, not from the size of your fleet. Guards escorted Crane from his own throne room. Observer Ornis took control, issuing orders with calm efficiency. The battle was over, not through military victory, but through the collapse of the enemy's will to fight. Arya felt her legs shaking, but forced herself to remain standing. Captain Rail approached her, his expression complex. You took a terrible risk, he said. It was the only way to end this without more death. Many of my people will not forgive you for what you did to Crane. I know. But some will understand, and that's enough. Rail nodded slowly. We have much to discuss. Negotiations, reparations, future relations. But first, your colony is safe. My fleet will withdraw to neutral distance. Thank you, Arya said simply. As she walked back through the corridors toward her shuttle, she let herself feel the exhaustion finally. They had won, but the cost had been enormous. Ships destroyed, lives lost. And the hard work of building peace was just beginning, but they had not knelt. And that would echo across the galaxy for years to come. 6 months had passed since the Draxian fleet withdrew from Meridian. The asteroid field still bore scars from the battle, twisted metal fragments floating among the rocks like monuments to what had happened there. But the colony itself was healing. Buildings had been repaired, families reunited, and slowly, carefully, life was returning to normal. Arya walked through the memorial garden where they had placed markers for the fallen. 43 names carved in stone. Pilots, engineers, crew members who had given everything to keep their home free. She touched each stone as she passed, remembering faces and voices. Owen Cross had recovered from his injuries and was back on flight status, though he still moved stiffly on cold days. Rosa Silva had been promoted to chief engineer for the entire sector, her innovations during the battle now being studied across human space. Admiral Stone had finally retired for real this time, spending his days teaching tactics at the Naval Academy. They would be proud of what we built, a voice said behind her. Arya turned to see Captain Rail walking toward her across the grass. The Draxian wore civilian clothing instead of armor, a sign of respect when visiting another species' territory. In the months since taking command, he had proven himself a very different leader than Crane had been. "I did not expect to see you here," Arya said. "I thought you were still on your homeworld dealing with the council. The hearings are finished. Crane has been stripped of all rank and titles. He will spend the rest of his life in exile on a remote moon, forbidden from ever commanding again." Rael looked around the memorial garden. The council debated what punishment I should receive as well. Some called me a traitor for turning against my superior officer. "But you are still captain." "I am." The council ruled that invoking the right of question was lawful and necessary. But my career advancement has ended. I will never be general now. Too many see me as the officer who broke ranks. He said it without bitterness, simply stating fact. Arya gestured toward a bench, and they sat together overlooking the colony. In the distance, children played in a park, their laughter carrying on the wind. It was hard to believe that 6 months ago this place had been hours away from destruction. "Do you regret your choice?" Arya asked. Rael considered the question carefully. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had remained silent. If I had followed orders like a good soldier. But then I remember the human pilot in that fighter, refusing to surrender even when his ship was dying. I remember you standing in that throne room, unarmed, speaking truth to someone who wanted you dead. And I realized that real courage is not about following orders. It is about knowing when to stand for something greater than yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The relationship between humans and Draxians had changed dramatically since the battle. Trade agreements had been signed. Cultural exchange programs were underway. Dr. Neil Park was currently on the Draxian homeworld, teaching at their most prestigious university about human philosophy and ethics. The students there were fascinated by the concept that strength could come from something other than domination. "There are others who think like you," Arya said. "Young Draxians who question the old ways. More than you know. The events at Meridian have sparked debates across our empire. Other subjugated species have begun asking questions. 3 have successfully negotiated for greater autonomy. The Council worries that the empire we built on fear is beginning to crumble. Is that a bad thing?" Rael smiled, an expression that still looked strange on a Draxian face but was becoming more common. "My father would say yes. He was a general in the old style, but I think change is necessary. An empire built on forcing others to kneel cannot last forever. Eventually people stand up. You proved that." "We just refused to kneel in the first place," Arya said. "Sometimes that is enough." Her communicator buzzed. She checked it and frowned. "Emergency priority message from Sector Command. Something is happening at the frontier." Rael's expression grew serious. "What kind of something?" Arya read quickly, her frown deepening. "Another species has entered our space. They are called the Talon Confederation. 20 ships demanding surrender from a colony called Haven Station. They say the colony has 1 day to submit, or they will demonstrate why resistance is futile. The same tactics Crane used." Almost word for word, Arya stood, her mind already shifting to tactical thinking. "I need to get back to command. If this is starting again with a different species, then the lessons from Meridian need to be taught again." Rael finished. He stood as well. "Captain Blake, with your permission, I would like to accompany you. My ship is in orbit. Perhaps if these Talons see that humans and Draxians now stand together, they will reconsider their demands." Arya looked at him in surprise. "Your council approved this?" "They did not forbid it. And I learned from you that sometimes it is better to ask forgiveness than permission." He smiled. "Besides, I am now the Draxian expert on human relations. Where else would I be during a crisis?" They walked together toward the command center. Governor Harris met them in the lobby, looking worried but determined. The fear that had dominated him during Crane's attack was gone, replaced by something harder. "I heard," Harris said without preamble. "Haven Station is smaller than us, only 12,000 people. They have almost no military presence." "Then we go help them," Arya said simply. "With what fleet? We are still rebuilding. We have 8 operational ships, most of them still showing battle damage. We have experience," Arya countered. "We know how to fight species that rely on intimidation, and we have allies now." She gestured to Rael, Send a message to Haven Station. Tell them help is coming. Tell them they do not have to kneel. India. The command center display showed the situation developing at Haven Station. The Talon ships were different in design from Draxian vessels, more organic-looking with curved hulls. But the tactics were familiar. They had positioned themselves to blockade the colony, cutting off escape routes, making their presence overwhelming and inescapable. Admiral Stone, who had come out of retirement the moment news broke, pulled up historical data on the Talons. They are a younger species, only been spacefaring for 70 years. They expanded aggressively in their home sector, absorbing 4 smaller species. This is their first contact with human territory. They chose poorly, Owen said from the tactical station. He had arrived within minutes of the alert, moving stiffly, but with determination. If they had researched us, they would know about Meridian. Maybe they did research us, Dr. Neal suggested, joining them at the displays. Maybe they think that because we are still rebuilding, we are vulnerable. Or maybe they think our victory over the Draxians was luck. Then we teach them the same lesson we taught Crane, Arya said. She turned to Rail. How many ships can you bring? I have only my personal vessel and 2 escorts. But Observer Ornis is still in this sector with 3 diplomatic ships. He might be persuaded to join us as neutral observers. The presence of the High Council might give the Talons pause. Arya nodded. We leave in 2 hours. Send messages to every ship in range. Anyone who wants to support Haven Station, anyone who believes that species should not be forced to kneel, join us there. Let's show these Talons that Meridian was not an isolated incident. It was a statement. The fleet that gathered over the next 2 hours was small but significant. 8 human warships, Rail's 3 Draxian vessels, Observer Ornis and his diplomatic contingent, and surprisingly, 5 ships from other species who had been watching the situation develop. One was from a species that had been conquered by the Draxians decades ago and were inspired by humanity's resistance to demand their own freedom. As the combined fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel toward Haven Station, Arya felt the weight of what they were doing. This was no longer about one colony defending itself. This was about establishing a principle, a line in space that said aggression and intimidation would not be tolerated. They arrived at Haven Station to find the Talon fleet had not yet attacked. The deadline was still 6 hours away. The Talons seemed confused by the arrival of such a mixed force, ships from multiple species all converging on this single point. Arya opened a communication channel to the Talon commander, a being that looked vaguely insectoid with multiple arms and compound eyes. She spoke clearly and without threats. Commander of the Talon Confederation, I am Captain Arya Blake, representing the human colony of Meridian and our allies. You have demanded that Haven Station surrender. We are here to inform you that they decline. If you wish to engage in honorable combat, we are prepared to defend them. If you wish to negotiate peaceful relations, we are open to discussion. But if you believe you can simply intimidate these people into submission, you are mistaken. The Talon commander's translator made his voice sound buzzing and mechanical. You are outnumbered. We have 20 ships. You have barely more than half that number. Numbers are not everything, Arya replied. 6 months ago, the Draxian Empire sent 53 ships to force my colony to kneel. Those ships left with nothing. We fought them to a standstill and broke their will to continue. Ask yourself if you want to be the next example of why intimidation does not work against species who refuse to be victims. Behind her, Captain Rail moved into view of the camera. His presence was deliberate, showing that former enemies now stood together. Other species representatives did the same, creating a visual message stronger than any words. This was not just humans defending humans. This was the beginning of something larger. The Talon commander was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind through metal tubes. You are either very brave or very foolish. We will consider your words. But know that the Talon Confederation does not make empty threats. Neither do we, Arya said. Take your time, we will be here. The communication ended. Admiral Stone whistled softly. Well, that was less aggressive than I expected. They are calculating, Dr. Neal said. Trying to decide if we are worth the risk. They probably expected an easy target and found a coordinated defense instead. The next 4 hours were tense. The Talon fleet maintained position, making no aggressive moves but not withdrawing either. Arya used the time to coordinate defensive positions with Haven Station's limited resources and ensure all ships were ready if combat became necessary. Finally, a new transmission came. The Talon commander appeared again and his tone was different. Less aggressive, more curious. Captain Blake, we have consulted with our leadership. They are interested in your proposition of negotiation. The Talon Confederation seeks expansion, yes, but we are not opposed to doing so through cooperation, rather than conquest. Perhaps there are mutual benefits to be explored. Arya felt tension drain from her shoulders. We are willing to discuss trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchange, but those discussions happen between equals, not between conquerors and conquered. Agreed. We will withdraw to neutral distance and send diplomatic representatives. Perhaps we judged your species too quickly. The Talon fleet began moving away from Haven Station. Cheers erupted in the command center. Haven Station sent grateful messages. Captain Rail clasped Arya's shoulder in a gesture of respect. You did it again, he said quietly. Changed everything without firing a shot. We did it together, Arya corrected. That fleet out there represents something new. Species working together, standing up for each other. Maybe this is how we build a better galaxy. Later, as the combined fleet prepared to disperse back to their home territories, Arya stood at the observation window watching the stars. Owen joined her, still moving carefully but smiling. Do you think this will keep happening? He asked. Aggressive species showing up demanding submission? Probably, Arya admitted. The galaxy is a big place and there will always be someone who thinks might makes right. And we will always be there to remind them it does not? Arya thought about the memorial garden on Meridian, about the cost of standing firm and the price of freedom. She thought about Rail's journey from loyal soldier to someone willing to question orders. She thought about Haven Station's families who would sleep safely tonight because others had stood up for them. Yes, she said finally. We will be there. Because the alternative is a galaxy where strength is measured only in weapons and fear. And humanity did not come this far to accept that kind of universe.